The light inside the old storage facility flickers, as if uncertain whether it should disturb the space. For years, the interior has remained untouched, sealed behind a rusted latch and a layer of desert dust. Now, in the slanting beam of a late Nevada afternoon, the room seems frozen in a moment that never learned how to move forward. The air holds a texture of age, powdered dirt, faint metal, and the quiet cold of a memory that waited too long for someone to return. This is where the file says it happened. This is where the silence grew, and now where the silence must break. Investigator Hale Morton steps through the threshold with a careful, almost hesitant rhythm, as though afraid he might wake the scene itself. His movements are not dramatic, only controlled, steady, shaped by years spent walking into rooms where time had stopped for someone. He pauses, letting his eyes adjust to the dimness. The corners are still shapeless. The shadows still hold their shape like unanswered questions. It has been 3 decades since the case was sealed and filed away. 30 years since the scene was catalogued, photographed, boxed, and stored under the assumption that nothing more could be done. Yet the air still feels warm with the shadow of that evening. Hale feels it rising around him, not loud, not sharp, just present. The victim's name returns to him, the way an old song does, faint, familiar, carrying a weight he can't quite define. Liora Dane, age 28 at the time, born in a small town farther north, known for her calm voice, sharp mind, and a quiet independence that shaped much of her life. The reports describe her as a technician who worked odd hours and kept to a close circle of friends. She had no recorded troubles, no known disputes, no signs of conflict in her personal records. And yet, one evening in 1996, her life ended inside this very room, leaving behind a single uncertain moment that would never be explained. Hale glides a gloved hand along the nearest metal shelf. The dust lifts easily, untouched. He tries to picture her here, tries to imagine the last trace of her movement, but memory does not cooperate. The scene is not vivid, it is hollow. Too much time has passed, too much has faded, but the atmosphere carries something he can't name, something that feels as though it survived the years. He steadies his breathing and surveys the room. The crime scene photos from 1996 show a different angle, boxes stacked neatly, equipment aligned, a light fixture unbroken, a floor free of clutter. Today, the boxes are still here, though some have sagged with time. A few metal instruments lie where they originally fell, their purpose softened by decades of disuse. The original team found no sign of forced entry, no sign of a struggle, only a faint mark on the floor and a smear on the edge of a metal casing, too faint to analyze back then. The room had been too warm that night, the humidity too low, the desert wind too harsh. Evidence dissolved quickly, leaving only fragments. Hale kneels near the far corner, the place where the report places her last known position. He studies the outline engraved by memory rather than chalk. His light moves slowly, revealing pits in the concrete, small flecks of metal, and the thin residue of dust that has settled like snowfall over forgotten moments. He speaks softly, almost to himself. "Liora, what did we miss?" His voice carries no drama, only a quiet, investigative sincerity. The air does not answer. He stands again, taking in the scene from a broader distance. This case was one of his first assignments as a trainee. He wasn't inside this room then, only assisting remotely, sorting forms, matching statements, following orders. He remembers the frustration of watching the team declare the case unsustainable. He remembers thinking they were closing it too quickly. And now, decades later, this same room seems to wait for him, offering no comfort, only unfinished truth. The first heading demands suspense, and the room offers it naturally. Not loud suspense, not cinematic theatrics, but a deeper kind. The suspense of clarity almost found, the suspense of something subtle but decisive lying under the dust, waiting for the right mind to look at it again. Hale takes a single photo with his new device, not for evidence but as a moment marker, a reminder that this is where the case begins anew. The light flashes briefly and vanishes, swallowed by the stillness. In the center of the room is a metal table. The team had cleared it in 1996. Now, only a thin sheet of dust covers its surface. Hale rests his hand near the edge, feeling the cold metal through the glove. He lets the moment stretch, silent, patient. He senses rather than sees the shift, a soft crackle, a faint settling of air. Objects have not moved, but the atmosphere has. Something feels aligned again, as though the room has decided to cooperate, to reveal something small, not dramatic, not loud, but a detail overlooked 30 years ago. He whispers again, "I'm listening." And as if in response, his light lands on a small glint at the far edge of a lower shelf. A piece of glass, no larger than a fingernail, shaped unevenly. It doesn't belong there. It wasn't listed in the original logs. It is too isolated to be debris. Hale steps toward it, bending slowly, making sure not to disturb the dust around it. The shard sits at a slight angle, half embedded in the grime. He studies it quietly. The color is faintly amber, not from equipment in this room, not from common tools used here. Something else. He photographs it, then marks the position. For the first time in 30 years, the room has offered its first whisper of truth. And that is how the case begins again. Case reopens due to discovery of new crucial evidence. 1,000 words. The call that brought Hale back to the case came only 48 hours earlier. A routine inventory sweep of the county archives uncovered a box mislabeled years ago, a box containing evidence logs that did not match any known entries in the database. A clerical error, harmless on the surface, yet something about it caught his attention the moment he saw the scanned list. One item in particular stood out. Item 17B, partial sample, sealed, origin unclear. The file indicated that the sample had never been analyzed due to early system limitations. The note attached read simply, "Too faint for method at time." No signature. No initials, nothing linking it to any known technician. Hale had requested the physical box. It arrived with dust thicker than the storage room. The seal was intact, confirming the evidence had not been touched since its placement decades ago. Inside was the sample, a small plastic envelope containing a faint residue trapped between two glass slides. A technician had likely planned to process it, then stored it when early machines failed to produce results. Modern systems, however, were different. Within hours of feeding the sample into the new analyzer, Hale received a notification. The residue carried a trace signature, not a full identification, not a match to any known individual, but a pattern, subtle yet distinct. Something that could only have been transferred by direct contact during the final moments of the event. This alone was enough to justify reopening the case. The old superintendent approved it without hesitation, perhaps grateful that a cold file might finally see movement. Now standing in the storage facility again, Hale replays the findings in his mind. The pattern was consistent with contact involving a polished object, a personal item, most likely, not a tool from the room, something worn by a person, something that had scraped against a surface during the event. The shard he found earlier, amber, curved, uneven, fits the possibility. He catalogs it, seals it, and places it in a new evidence container. Nothing about the discovery is dramatic, but its implications stretch wide. Every reopened case begins with something small, a misfiled envelope, a misplaced note, A forgotten sample. This one begins with a faint residue and a shard that refuses to belong to its surroundings. He steps outside for a moment. The Nevada air is cool, clear, carrying that dry weight unique to the desert. He stands still, letting the environment settle around him. Reopening the case is not solely a procedural step. It is an acknowledgement that something was left unfinished. A quiet question presses beneath his thoughts. Was the truth always here, or did they simply not know how to see it? He re-enters the facility, focusing now on the structural layout. The case reopening demands structure, order, precision. He maps the room again. Entrance to the left, ventilation duct near the roof line, shelves aligned in two narrow rows, central table. Liora Dane's last confirmed position marked by a faint scuff near the eastern corner. He lifts the old file. The paper smells faintly of aging fibers, something dry with time. He opens the folder and studies the sequence of statements from 1996, most of them brief, routine, lacking depth. He underlines the details that now stand out. Time logged who last saw her, how the room looked when discovered. Most people assume reopening a case means excitement. In truth, it means repetition. Returning not just to scenes, but to phrases, lines, and observations written long ago by hands that believed they had done all they could. Hale reads silently. Victim found alone. No indication of entry. No sign of struggle. Room temperature elevated due to malfunctioning unit. Each sentence now feels incomplete. The crucial evidence, the pattern on the sample, the shard on the shelf, demands a new interpretation of these statements. A malfunctioning unit might have obscured more than just comfort. It could have altered surface conditions, changed residue reactions, softened marks. A room that appeared orderly could have masked a moment too subtle for the initial team to recognize. Hale turns off his light again. He scans the room one more time. Something shifts in his understanding. The scene was not untouched. It was simply misunderstood. The evidence may not have been missing, only invisible to the tools and mindsets of 1996. A new case file begins. Investigator examines past reports to identify overlooked details. 1,000 words. Hale sits at a long metal desk inside the temporary operations room. A single lamp casts a narrow circle of light over the array of folders spread before him. The world outside is quiet. The desert nights tend to carry sound only when the wind insists. Tonight, the air is still. He opens the earliest report first. The handwriting is steady, neat, methodical. The lead investigator from 1996 had decades of experience, yet even experienced eyes miss things when technology is limited. Hale reads slowly, tracing the lines with the edge of his glove. He is not searching for contradictions, yet only tone, assumptions, patterns. The report describes Liora Dane's day with ordinary detail. Morning routine, check-in at work, brief conversation with a colleague, movement through hallways. Nothing unusual, nothing suggestive of conflict. Her last recorded interaction was a simple exchange with a coworker who recalled her carrying a small amber-colored accessory in her hand, something she had recently repaired. Hale pauses. Amber-colored. He pulls the new evidence container from his bag and sets it beside the report. He studies the shard within, the curved shape, the faint hue. Could it be part of the accessory? Possibly, but he holds off on forming conclusions. He continues reading. The original report notes that her accessory was never found after the event. The team assumed she dropped it somewhere earlier. No one pursued it further. Hale flips to the next file, the statements from colleagues. Most are brief. One stands out, a coworker named Myra, who described Liora as thoughtful, careful, always aware of her surroundings. She also mentioned that Liora had expressed mild worry in the weeks leading up to the event, not fear, not distress, just a subtle sense that something around her felt off. The original team dismissed it as general workplace fatigue. Hale continues reading. The sound of paper carries a dry rhythm. Each page feels heavier than the last. A maintenance log from the same week catches his attention. The ventilation duct in the storage facility had been serviced 2 days before the event. The technician noted slight misalignment in the upper panel, nothing critical, but noticeable. The original team ignored the note. Hale marks it. Another overlooked point appears in a peripheral entry. The room temperature irregularity was not caused by mechanical failure, but by manual adjustment. Someone had turned the thermostat dial earlier that day. Not logged, not explained. Another mark. He shifts to the photos. He arranges them chronologically, following the sequence of the original team's walkthrough. Details emerge now that the initial investigators couldn't have enhanced. Dust patterns, subtle light reflections, angles of fallen tools. He studies the outline of her final position. Her proximity to the lower shelf makes the presence of the shard increasingly relevant. He leans back, letting the information settle. The room inside his mind begins to rearrange, slowly shaping itself into a clearer image. He speaks quietly, barely audible. Something small, something right in front of them. His eyes return to an overlooked detail in a corner of one photograph. A faint streak running vertically down the metal casing, almost invisible unless the angle is correct. The original team must not have seen it due to the poor lighting. Hale enlarges the image on his device. The streak has a slight curve, similar to the curved edge of the shard. He reaches for the shard again and studies its contour. It aligns with the curve on the casing image. An object collided with the casing. Not aggressively, not forcibly, but enough to leave a mark. He writes the observation down in simple lines. Impact low force. Angle downward. Object curved amber-like. Cause contact during final moment. He does not write what he already suspects, that the accessory may have been involved, not until he has more. He moves to the final section of the reports, the timeline reconstruction. The reports place Liora in the facility at 8:32 p.m. She was discovered at 9:14 p.m. The window is narrow, yet the team in 1996 struggled to fill it with convincing clarity. The new evidence suggests something happened in that window that left small traces, instead of large disruptions. Hale closes the folder and stacks the documents neatly. The slow, methodical examination has revealed more than he expected. A missing accessory. A misaligned vent. A manually altered temperature. A faint streak. And a pattern in a forgotten sample. None of these alone reveal the truth, but together they create a pattern, not loud, not obvious, but present. He exhales slowly, steady, calm. The overlooked details form the backbone of a story waiting to be uncovered. And Hale Morton is ready to follow it. Morning settles over the operations room in a pale wash of light, cool and understated. Investigator Hale Morton stands before the wall where he has pinned the early observations, photos, notes, fragments of timelines that stretch like thin veins across the surface. The case, long stagnant, now branches outward. Every detail points to movement. Every quiet inconsistency demands a name attached to it. There were 3 individuals connected closely enough to Liora Dane's final evening to warrant deeper examination. None had been treated as central in 1996. The absence of clear signs, the quiet nature of the scene, and the lack of physical evidence had left the team disinterested in pressing further. Now, the reopening places them back into the frame. Hale studies their files. 1 Myra Haldane colleague, last to speak with Liora. Her statement from 1996 is soft, linear, almost too neat. She recalled Liora mentioning a small repair she had finished on an accessory, amber-colored, handmade. Myra claimed she left work early that evening, saying she felt tired. Her alibi was simple: home alone, lights off, quiet evening. No one could confirm it. The original investigators didn't press. She had no clear reason for conflict, no friction with Liora. She was described as calm, consistent, thoughtful. Yet Hale senses a subtle hesitation in the cadence of her old statement, not deception, but something unsaid. He marks her name. 2 Ravan Creed, maintenance technician. His logs placed him near the storage facility 2 days before the event, adjusting the ventilation duct. His signature appears on the maintenance sheet, but his statement from the night is vague. He mentioned being in and out of the building during the evening, performing routine checks. His recorded exit time had no second witness. The misaligned panel in the duct and the unexplained thermostat adjustment fall within his area of access. Not evidence of guilt, only proximity, opportunity, and inconsistency. Hale marks him next. 3 Darien Lock, equipment supplier, occasionally visited the facility. He had delivered components earlier that same week. His interactions with Liora were described as cordial but limited. Yet one colleague remembered a brief conversation between the two, where Darien appeared animated, possibly frustrated. No details were given. Darien claimed he was on the interstate at the time of the event, driving home before nightfall. Traffic cameras then were limited. The original team had no way to verify his route or timeline precisely. 3 individuals, 3 incomplete stories, 3 subtle connections to the room where Liora Dane spent her final moments. Hale arranges their photos beneath the timeline. The patterns do not converge yet, but the distance between their accounts feels narrower now that new evidence has surfaced. He begins with Myra. Her statement repeats the same phrase twice. She looked as though something was on her mind. Hale reads it slowly. The tone is caring but also guarded. Did Liora confide anything? Was Myra protecting her privacy or omitting something with intent? The 1996 interview lasted under 10 minutes, too brief for a colleague and close acquaintance. He notes the gap. Next, Ravan Creed's logs. Hale traces the pencil marks in the margins, likely added by the old team. The notes reference his routine, his movements, nothing definitive, but his presence near the facility shortly before the event, paired with a mechanical irregularity and a temperature change, pushes him deeper into the circle. Last, Darien Locke. His temper recorded only in passing, one line written by an observer who never expanded on it. The old team dismissed the interaction as stress related to scheduling. Hale reconsiders it now. If Darien had been frustrated with a late order or a malfunctioning piece of equipment, could his conversation with Liora have carried more weight than assumed? Hale lifts the shard, still sealed in its small envelope. He sets it between the photos of the 3 suspects. It sits there like a quiet question. He imagines the accessory in Liora's hand, amber-colored, curved. The shard could have broken during the final moment, striking the metal casing and leaving the faint streak visible only through enhanced imaging. The question is not who held the object, Liora did. The question is, who caused the movement that led to its break? He closes his eyes briefly, letting the thought settle. 3 suspects. 3 motives possible, though none overt. Concern becoming confrontation. Routine becoming oversight. Professional tension becoming something more. Each carries an alibi built not on strong support, but on the absence of contradiction. Sometimes lack of evidence is mistaken for proof of innocence. Hale turns to the window. The desert horizon is distant, a thin blue strip beneath the sky. He thinks quietly. Someone here knows more than they said. He returns to the board, draws 3 thin lines connecting each suspect to the scene. The lines do not meet yet, but he can feel the eventual convergence ahead, a slow tightening of the circle. The case now breathes. Clues emerge slowly, linking inconsistencies to emotional conflicts. 500 remaining words. The following afternoon, Hale requests updated statements. The suspects arrive separately, quiet under the neutral tone of the reopening. He meets Myra first. She enters with a composed posture, hands clasped, voice measured. Hale notes the faint tremor when she sits, not fear, but tension carried from something long held inside. His questions are simple. Did Liora tell you anything that week? A pause, not exactly, just that she had been making changes. New routine, new habits. What kind of changes? Myra hesitates, glancing down. She said she wanted more clarity in her surroundings, that she was reevaluating people she trusted. Hale absorbs the words. The phrasing is delicate, almost coded. Reevaluating whom? Why? Myra offers no further detail unless asked, and even then, only soft fragments. Emotional conflict here is clear, not dramatic, but real. The type that remains unspoken between close colleagues until circumstances force it into view. Next, Revan Creed. He sits with a stillness that seems practiced. His answers are straightforward, yet some carry a subtle defensiveness. When Hale asks about the ventilation panel, Revan's gaze narrows slightly. It was aligned when I left it, he says. If it shifted, something else caused it. And the thermostat, Hale asks. Revan's expression tightens. No idea, I didn't touch it. Yet the logs show he was in the room that day. The temperature change wasn't noted by anyone else. Small inconsistencies begin to form a line, not of guilt, but of unease. Finally, Darien Locke. His demeanor is different, less composed. He shifts in his chair, fingers tapping softly. His voice carries a restrained agitation, not aimed at Hale but at the memory of the past. I didn't have a problem with her, he says. We talked about a delay in a shipment, that's all. But Hale notices the moment. Darien mentions the accessory. She fixed something that day, he recalls. Had it in her hand when we spoke. He remembers the color, amber. He remembers the curve. He remembers her turning it over as though still testing its repair. Hale writes quietly. Accessory noted again. Emotional tension confirmed. Minor but real. The clues do not illuminate motive yet, but they reveal the emotional contours of Liora's final week. She was reevaluating people. She was adjusting habits. She was carrying an item she had repaired, as though it mattered more than the reports captured. Small details. Small tensions. Small inconsistencies. Cases are rarely solved by grand revelations. They are solved by understanding the subtle weight of moments people thought would go unnoticed. And here, in the slow unraveling of statements, Hale feels the first clear shift, the sense that one of these individuals is protecting a truth small enough to hide, yet significant enough to shape everything. Night settles softly over the temporary operations room. Only the lamp remains lit, casting a thin, almost clinical glow over the map of notes Hale has been building for days. The air is still. Even the quiet hum of the ventilation seems subdued, as though the room itself anticipates a shift. Hale stands before the board, arms folded, gaze steady. The clues, until now scattered and soft, begin to form a subtle shape, not a loud pattern, but something precise, compact and quietly devastating. He looks again at the three suspects. Myra Haldon, Ravan Creed, Darien Locke. Each had emotional tension with Liora, each had inconsistencies, each had access. Yet something has nagged at him since the first interview, the shard's position. He moves closer to the evidence photo, the amber fragment lying on the lower shelf, half embedded in dust, the streak on the metal casing, the faint downward angle, the curve. If Liora held the accessory in her hand, and if it broke during the final moment, it should have fallen where she fell, not several feet away on a shelf. This alone shifts the entire case. Hale replays the scene in his mind with precision. If someone reached toward her hand, even briefly, the accessory could have struck the casing before the final collapse. But the location of the shard suggests it bounced, or was brushed aside later. He returns to Myra's interview. Her hesitation, her controlled demeanor, the strain behind her careful phrasing. She spoke with restraint, but restraint doesn't signal guilt, it signals withheld emotion. Hale can sense that Myra's tension is more sorrow than concealment. Ravan's inconsistencies are practical, not emotional. He may have overlooked something in the facility, but nothing about his tone or manner suggests an unexpected moment of reaction involving Liora. Darien, however. Hale reviews the audio again. The way Darien's voice shifts when mentioning the accessory. The way his tapping accelerates. A small detail surfaces. When Darien described the conversation with Liora, he said she was turning the accessory in her hand, turning it gently, testing it. But in Myra's account, Liora had said she finished the repair earlier and had placed the accessory in her coat pocket, pleased with the result. The two descriptions conflict. Hale widens both statements on the desk. Darien's wording becomes important. She kept twisting it around, like she wasn't done fixing it. But according to Myra, she had finished it. Only two possibilities exist. Either Myra remembered wrong, or Darien saw the accessory earlier than he admitted. The second possibility carries force. Hale marks it. He moves to the temperature logs. The thermostat was adjusted manually before the event. Darien had been delivering equipment earlier that day, and his deliveries often required access to the interior rooms for signatures or placement. He had the clearance to walk through the facility. The misaligned vent panel, Ravan could have caused that. It fits his role. But the temperature change that is unrelated to maintenance. Someone turned it deliberately. A heightened temperature can weaken adhesives, soften surfaces, and make certain materials, like resin-based amber, more fragile. Hale writes quietly. Accessory weakened by heat. His pulse remains even. He studies the shard again. Its break line is soft, brittle, consistent with rapid exposure to rising heat. Darien had been inside shortly before the event. He admitted discussing a delay with Liora. He displayed frustration during that exchange, and he remembered her fixing something in a way that contradicts her own timeline. The twist forms not from coincidence, but from logic, the alignment of small truths. Hale exhales slowly as it becomes clear. The least suspected individual, the equipment supplier, the one with the weakest known connection, is the one whose inconsistencies form the most coherent chain. Darien Locke did not intend a grand act. The clues show no plan, no preparation. Only a moment of impulse triggered by frustration, an attempt to grab her arm or stop her from walking away, leading to the break of the accessory against the metal casing. A sudden, uncontrolled moment. Not rooted in long conflict. Not rooted in deep motive. But in the quiet, subtle tension of a conversation that ended badly. No drama. No outburst. Just a single, fragile moment where control slipped. The room falls into stillness as Hale writes the final link. Darien Locke was with her. He reached for her. The accessory broke. The shard flew. Heat softened it. Vent misalignment irrelevant. Temperature change deliberate. Sequence clear. The twist is complete, quiet, inevitable, almost whisper-like in its simplicity. Not a dramatic revelation. Just truth uncovered at last. Ends with moral reflection. Truth isn't always visible on surface. Tilde 500 remaining words. Darien Locke's interview is quiet. He sits across from Hale with a composed expression, shoulders lifted slightly, eyes calm. He doesn't resist questions. He doesn't panic. He speaks as though relieved that someone finally understands the moment correctly. He admits only the part he can face. There was tension. I reached toward her too fast. I didn't mean for anything to happen. His voice is steady, not cold, not dramatic, just steady. He explains that the accessory fell, struck the metal casing, broke. She reacted with shock. He stepped back. There was a moment where neither knew how to speak, and then everything moved too quickly for him to process. No sinister plan. No long-standing conflict. Only a single fragment of time, brief, fragile, decisive. Hale listens with a clinical silence, cataloging each detail. The truth is steady, logical, devastating in its simplicity. When the interview ends, Hale files the statement without triumph. Solutions in cold cases do not bring satisfaction, only stillness. Later that night, Hale returns to the old storage facility one last time. The room looks the same as it did on the first day he re-entered, quiet, muted, almost forgiving. Yet it feels different now. Not resolved, not cleansed, but recontextualized. He stands in the corner where Liora was last seen. The air carries no echo of her final breath, only the faint whisper of what was overlooked, the small, almost invisible details that hid the truth for 30 years. He turns slowly, absorbing the space. The streak on the metal casing. The position of the shard. The softened resin. The altered temperature. The conflicting statements. The human impulse that unraveled everything. Truth rarely arrives in dramatic waves. It slides in quietly, through the narrow spaces people forget to examine. Hale steps back toward the entrance. He pauses at the threshold, allowing the moment to settle, the end of a long silence, the closing of a room that waited decades for its story to be finished. His final thought is not about justice or closure. It is about the fragile nature of truth, how it hides in small angles, soft fragments, faint details that escape the confident and reward the patient. He whispers into the quiet. Some truths sit just beneath the dust. And as he closes the door, leaving the room to its long-awaited rest, he understands the quiet lesson left behind. Justice moves on paper. Truth moves in silence. Neither fully resolves the past, but both at least acknowledge it.